A quantum model of the Sun and planetary system as analogues of atomic nucleus and atom. The standard model of the Sun is plagued by numerous anomalies. It can't be directly tested, and the indirect evidence does not support the model. Could the standard narrative about the Sun be wrong? In TCD, one ends up to a view of the Sun and planetary system as analogues of atomic nucleus and atom. Gravitational quantum coherence in astrophysical scales plays a key role in the model. The progress in the model of the Sun leads to rather dramatic predictions. In particular, the layer of M89 giant nuclei, monopole flux tubes as nuclear strings, consisting of M89 nucleons with mass which is 512 times the mass of the ordinary nucleon, would produce the nuclei of the solar wind and also the energy of the solar radiation. The solar core would lose its role as a seat of hot fusion and energy production. What is its function? This is the question. In TCD, the interior of the Sun could be a quantum coherent system analogous to atomic nucleus, with hot fusion replaced with what I call dark fusion. It explains cold fusion in TCD universe. This would conform with the earlier model of the planetary system as an analog of atom, with a gigantic value of the gravitational Planck constant, whose form is fixed by the equivalence principle. Solar interior would be also analogous to the cell nucleus. Both two nuclei, cell nucleus and atomic nucleus. The genetic code essential for biology would be realized in terms of dark nucleus strings. Darkness in the sense of TCD, very large Planck constant. This realization would be similar to that in the TCD-inspired quantum biology, which suggests that Stanislav Lem's Solaris gives some idea about the new Sun as a living system. The gravitational harmonic oscillator model, based on the assumption that approximation that mass density is constant inside Sun, describes the Sun quantum mechanically. Orbitals of nucleons are replaced with rigid two spheres with radii given by the harmonic oscillator model, and containing a surface density of matter which is consistent with the constant average density. The basic quantization condition states that the angular momentum is quantized, using as a unit gravitational Planck constant, associated with the total mass of the sphere and the spheres below it. These spheres are like atomic orbitals. This model can be applied also to planets. Also a model for the generation of planets in the explosions induced by the transformation of M89 nuclei to ordinary nuclei emerges. These explosions would throw out a part of the M89 layer with a baryon number which corresponds to 3 Earth's masses, giving upper bound for the mass of the planet. A brief summary of the model for the stars and planets. Thus, the layer of M89 nucleons at the surface of the Sun generate solar energy and solar wind. This is a question. The article Is the Sun a Black Hole by Nassim Haramein describes a collection of various anomalies related to the physics of the Sun. The article inspired the development of a more detailed model explaining these anomalies from the TCD point of view. The model expands to a model of the Sun and planets. The most important anomalies are the gamma ray anomalies and the missing nuclear matter of about 1500 Earth masses. This makes 1.5% of solar mass. There is also evidence that the solar surface contains a solid layer, something totally implausible and impossible in the standard atomic physics. The TCD-based model for the missing nuclear matter could assign the gamma ray anomalies to the magnetic body of the Sun. It consists of monopole flux tubes and is something totally new from the point of view of general relativity and Maxwellian electrodynamics. A magnetic bubble as a layer would cover the surface of the Sun. It would consist of closed monopole flux tube loops. One option is analysis of dipole field, containing flux tube portions along the magnetic axis from south to north and returning along the solar surface from north to south. In the second, more plausible looking option, the closed flux tubes reside at the solar surface. The flux tubes could carry M89 nucleons. They have mass which is 512 times the mass of ordinary nucleon. They could be characterized by the gravitational Planck constant of the Sun, which defines gravitational Compton length equal to radius of Earth divided by 2. This is same for all particles, equivalence principle. Intriguingly, the sunspot size is of this order of magnitude, Earth size divided by 2. This flux tube structure predicted to have mass of all 1500 Earth masses would correspond to 1 dark M89 nucleon per the Compton volume of the ordinary M89 nucleon. So that the analog of supraphase with very large overlap between wave functions would be in question. The magnetic body of the Sun, carrying very long strings of M89 nucleons, supernuclei, could be seen as a two-dimensional variant of the TCD counterpart of black hole. It would be dark. Gravitational Planck constant is very large. This model conforms with the earlier model of the sunspot activity, related to the reversal of the solar magnetic field. It would occur as a splitting of the closed flux tubes consisting of south and north directed parts. They would reconnect and split to short pieces, which change orientation and reconnect again, and in this way form flux tubes with opposite direction of the magnetic field. A possible explanation for the gamma ray anomalies observed in the range below 35 GeV and in TeV range would be in terms of M89 and MG79 methods. G is for Gaussian Mersenne, complex Mersenne primes. The decay of M89 nucleons to ordinary nucleons of the solar wind is a stepwise process that I call periodic cooling, and would generate anomalous gamma rays. The periodic length scale would reduce by a factor 1/2 in each step. This would guarantee that the final state, ordinary nucleus, have reasonable energies. I introduced this process to explain the mysterious Centauro and Gemini cosmic ray events 4 decades ago. Periodic cooling produces M89 mesons. The decay of M89 pions would produce gamma-ray pairs with energies below 35 GeV. The formation of M89 mesons could be also assigned to what in the QCD framework is interpreted as a formation of cloak-gluon plasma. In a process analogous to high-energy nuclear collisions, creating very high nuclear densities. Otherwise, the situation would be very different. The masses of the anomalous bumps at LHC found years ago support this interpretation, but since they did not fit with the SUSY predictions, they were forgotten. MG79 mesons decaying to gamma pairs with TeV energies could be generated in a touching of 2 M89 flux tubes, whose distance would be larger than 2 quantum lengths of M89 nucleus. Very similar process to the generation of the cloak-gluon plasma or its TGD counterpart actually. If the quantum length is gravitational quantum length, here AIS is essentially Schwarzschild radius, where this process becomes plausible. Recall that the density of these flux tubes is very, very large. 1 nucleon, M89 nucleon per ordinary M89 quantum volume. 10 to minus 8 meters is this quantum length. Could the solar core consist of dark nuclei? An additional input is provided by the model of dark nucleons. It is applied in models of cold fusion and pre-stellar evolution. The earlier proposal was that the heating by the dark fusion would ignite the ordinary nuclear reactions and give rise to the stellar core in this way. The convection zone could consist of dark nuclei and the core of ordinary nuclei. The ordinary nuclear fusion would be a part of this model. Unfortunately, we can't directly observe what happens inside the core. Only after a supernova explosion would the outcome of the nuclear fusion emerge into daylight. In the periodic cooling, if the periodic cooling generates solar wind and the radiation from the sun, the ordinary fusion is not needed to explain then. Is there any need for the hot fusion in the solar core? Also, the solar neutron problem challenges a standard picture. Mikheyev, Smirnov, Wolfenstein, MSV briefly, effect was proposed as a mechanism producing anomaly large mixing of the high-energy solar neutrons. It involves a resonance effect caused by the presence of the density of electrons with a value dictated by neutrino mass differences considered. The MSV effect might not be needed in the DCD-based model, since the M89 contribution would be decisive. A further anomaly is that neutrino flux correlates with the solar winds and anticorrelates with the sunspot activity, something impossible in the standard model. A much more radical possibility suggested by the proposal that the Sun is analogous to atomic nucleus is that dark fusion also applies in the core, and the temperature of the core is low, over the 10 keV, guaranteeing quantum criticality needed for an optimal dark fusion, explaining the cold fusion also. Reconnection and polarization reversal. The reversal of solar magnetic field occurs within an 11-year period. This is one of the poorly understood aspects of the Sun. I have proposed a model for this process. The reconnections over a monopole flux tube would make possible the orientation reversal. The portions of monopole flux tubes with opposite directions flowing from north to south and returning from south to north should be very near to each other and touch so that the splitting to closed monopole flux tubes becomes possible. These short flux tubes can change their orientation. After that, they can fuse back to the flux tubes with opposite direction of the magnetic flux. This would lead to change of the direction of the magnetic field. The polarization reversal could involve two subsequent time reversals, big state function reductions, which is something new and exotic. Near means here that the distance of the flux tubes is smaller than 1/2 of Earth radius. It is a relative notion. Note, however, that the density of M89 nucleus is 1 per ordinary Compton area parallel to the surface. A kind of supraphase with very large quantum overlap is in question. In vertical direction, the thickness would be 1/2 of Earth radius. And nearness would mean overlap in horizontal direction. In the DCD-inspired quantum biology, biocatalysis involves a reduction of effective Planck constant for the U-shaped flux tubes connecting the reactants. This reduces the length of the flux tubes and brings reactants together. The reduction of effective Planck constant also reduces energy because it increases with effective Planck constant. This kicks the reactants over the energy fall, preventing the reaction otherwise, and the rate is amplified by many orders of magnitude. One of the mysteries of biology. Now something analogous could take place. A closed flux tube consisting of these two portions and having a distance of 1/2 of Earth radius between parallel strands with opposite polarities could suffer a phase transition. It would reduce the value of gravitational Planck constant so that the distance would become very small and the direct connection splitting the long and narrow flux tubes would become possible. After this, the value of Planck constant would become back to its original large value. How MK89 nuclei could be regenerated? The birth of a new star requires the emergence of an M89 layer. This layer must be also regenerated after its decay. There might be also M89 nucleus deep in the interior of the Sun. It could play the role of the dipole of a dipole magnetic field. This option does not look very plausible. The M89 nuclei must be regenerated either in the solar nucleus or feed from outside to the M89 layer. This allows us to consider two identifications for the energy field needed to regenerate M89 nuclei. First option, time reversal could make it possible to effectively extract energy from the environment of the solar nucleus to transform M107 nuclei to M89 nuclei. The needed energies are huge, and it is far from clear whether these energies can be provided by ordinary nuclear reactions, which have much smaller energy scale, and even by the reactions transforming nuclei at different periodic temperatures to each other, which also involve huge energy scales. If this were the case, the energy would come from the solar core and generate a heat current towards the boundary of the Sun. Second option, the energy arrives at the sun from the outside. It could be kind of metabolic energy feed. TGD predicts that the stars of the galaxies form networks, connected by monopole flux tubes, and there is evidence for this. Could this kind of network acting like blood circulation feed M89 nuclei from, say, galactic nucleus to the sun to be used as a fuel? M89 nuclei, which are burned to M ordinary nuclei, and in this process induce periodic heating of the environment around the region at which they enter. This region could be either M89 layer or the solar nucleus. The simplest option is that it is the M89 layer. One can consider first option in more detail, although it seems that option 2 is more plausible. Periodic cooling occurring in a stepwise manner by increasing the periodic length scales by octaves would provide a model for the decay of M89 nuclei to the ordinary nuclei. Could one consider periodic heating of ordinary nuclei to M89 nuclei as a reversal of this process? There is evidence from LHC for the creation of M89 mesons, and the solar gamma ray anomalies suggest that M89 mesons and even MG79 mesons are produced in hadronic collisions. From this there is, however, a long way to the periodic heating of nuclei, increasing the mass by factor 512. Still, one can ask whether the periodic heating could lead in a stepwise manner to the formation of M89 nuclei. In zero-energy ontology, it is natural to ask whether the periodic heating could be a time reversal or a periodic cooling. And if this is the case, the process would be identifiable as a quantum tunneling involving a pair of big state function reductions. Arrow time changes twice. Big state function reduction. Huge energies are needed, but the rise of the temperature could take place by steps, proceeding hadronic physics by hadronic physics with decrease in periodic length scale. 107, 105, and so on, up to 89. 2 to 89 would be the periodic plane approximately. Time reversal and macroscopic quantum coherence are very general aspects of TGD, and one can of course wonder whether heating quite generally involves time reversal. In the TGD-based model of self-organization, the energy field could correspond to the extraction of energy from environment by using reversal of the arrow of time. Could one see also this ordinary heating as this kind of exotic process? This is completely possible in TGD framework, at least theoretically. So one can also ask whether the solar core could involve a hierarchy of layers, for which the periodic temperature increases in powers of 2 as one approaches nucleus, at least up to the QCD lambda, which is between 100 and 200 MeVs, which is assignable to the temperature at which the transition to quark-gluon plasma is believed to take place in QCD. In TGD, this phase would be totally different, M89 nucleus. This option is of course a diametric opposite of the suggestion that solar core is at relatively low temperature, and dark fusion implies even the analog of genetic evolution, so that solar nucleus would be kind of cell nucleus. At least this analogy would be rather complete. Could the Sun be a living system in some sense? Analysis with the TCD-inspired quantum biology. In the TCD-inspired quantum biology, the dark variants of ordinary nuclei provide a fundamental realization of the genetic code in terms of dark nuclei. This might be possible also for the M89 case. In TCD, the genetic code has a universal realization as a completely exceptional icosatetrahedral tessellation of the hyperbolic free space. It allows tetrahedra, octahedra, and icosahedra as building bricks, rather than only a single platonic solid. And also, the realization is possible in all length scales. Could the cosmic network of monopole flux tubes connected possibly to a galactic black hole-like object be analogous to a living organism? This network would provide, or galactic black hole would provide metabolic energy as M89 nuclei burned to ordinary nuclei. The filamentary structure observed in the cosmic scale strongly brings in mind the connective structure of the brain and could be associated with this monopole flux tube network. A similar flux tube network would be present in the brain. M89 layer would be responsible for the solar wind and radiation from the sun. What unavoidably comes to mind is the cell membrane. It acts as a sensory organ and excretes the outcome of the M89 catabolism as solar wind and surplus energy as solar radiation. What about the connected zone and solar core? If the abundances of the matter outside the stars are determined to a high degree by M89 physics at the surface layer, the standard view of the solar core becomes a mere narrative. It is challenged also by the anomalously low conductive heat transfer and the anomalously low neutrino flux from the core. In the quantum model of the Sun, the solar core could be practically isolated from the external world. The heat flow could be from the surface layer to the interior and could serve as a metabolic energy feed. Could the decay of M89 nuclei provide metabolic energy for some processes in the connected zone and also in the solar core, which both would consist of dark nuclei? If so, the energy transfer could be from the surface to the interior rather than vice versa as in the standard model. If the core as a quantum system is analogous to atomic nucleus with the counterparts of spherical mass cells characterized by a huge gravitational Planck constant as proposed in the gravitational harmonic oscillator model, one can ask whether the ordinary nuclear fusion occurs at all in the core, and whether the temperature of the solar core is what it is believed to be. Could the hot nuclear fusion be replaced with dark fusion for a quantum critical nuclear matter, explaining the cold fusion? Could the temperature correspond to a critical temperature for quantum criticality, making possible dark fusion? This temperature would be measured using 10 keV as a natural unit. Could the solar core be analogous also to the cell nucleus carrying the genome? This could be far away from the standard narrative. Could the process inside the core be interpreted as a self-organization of nuclei to heavier ones, representing the counterparts of genes in the DG-inspired quantum biology? Could the isolated solar core be analogous to a cell nucleus carrying the genome as an M107 realization of the genetic code realized also in living matter, where water plays also a key role? Could neutron stars and black hole-like objects represent the outcome of a genetic evolution? How do the incoming M89 flux tubes interact with the M89 layer? The quantum biological analogy allows us to imagine how the M89 monopole flux tubes arriving at the Sun look like and interact with the M89 layer of the Sun. In the DCD-inspired quantum biology, the monopole flux tubes act as U-shaped tentacles, and the reconnections build bridges as flux tube pairs along which communications and matter transfer can take place, for instance between two molecules bonded by these pairs. These tentacles are an essential element of biocatalysis and of functioning of the immune system in teaching by quantum biology. Microtubules are highly dynamical systems and could be associated with U-shaped flux tubes, tentacles. Their length can vary, they are quantum critical systems. The dark variants of the ordinary nuclei provide fundamental realization of genetic codes in terms of dark nuclei, and this might be possible also for the M89 case. The genetic code has a universal realization as a completely exceptional icosaedral tessellation of the hyperbolic free space. Consider now a model for the interaction of the incoming M89 flux tubes with those at the surface of the Sun. Imagine that a bundle of M89 monopole flux tubes arrives at the Sun from, say, galactic black hole-like entity, serving as a source of metabolic energy. The topology of the microtubule bundle gives some idea of what might be involved. Suppose that the arriving cylindrical bundle meets the surface of the Sun in a region near its magnetic north pole. The structure could be highly dynamic in this region near North Pole. Horizontal topological some connections between the homologically non-trivial spheres of flux tubes could give rise to larger quantum coherent units from the flux tubes. In the extreme situation, all the spheres could form a ring. The degree of the locality of the interactions with the M89 layer depends on the horizontal coherence. One can imagine microtubules and exam. One has also here 13 tubules, and they are horizontally connected. Consider now a situation where the arriving flux tube bundle turns back near the south pole of the Sun to form a U-shaped flux tube coming from the galactic nucleus. A reconnection of the U-shaped flux tube in the region near North Pole would split it to a single closed flux tube over the M89 layer. This splitting would occur for almost all arriving flux tubes. This process could generate the M89 layer, and the M89 matter lost in the periodic cooling to ordinary nuclei could be regenerated by reconnecting the closed flux tubes of the layer to the arriving flux tubes, feeding new M89 nuclei. This would be a basic mechanism of metabolism. What could be the quantum thickness of the M89 flux tube layer? A natural-looking assumption is that the flux tubes are dark, at least inside the Sun, and perhaps also before arriving and possibly leaving the Sun. The values of the effective Planck constants need not be the same. The gravitational Planck constant could be very different. The Compton length of the M89 nucleon is a fraction 1 over 512 of the Compton length for the ordinary nucleon, and it is ridiculously short, 10 to minus 18 meters. On the other hand, if one assumes that the density of dark M89 nuclei corresponds to roughly 1 per ordinary Compton area, one could understand the missing nuclear mass of 1/1500 Earth masses. Could gravitational Compton length lambda grav which does not depend on the mass of the particle equivalence principle, determine the thickness of the M89 layer. For the Sun, assuming beta 0 equal to 2 to minus 11, it would be London gravitational equal to 1/2 of Earth radius. Earth radius is roughly radius of Sun divided by 108. And it defines the size scale for sunspots, which is rather intriguing. For beta 0 equal to 1, it would be by factor 1/2000 short. It turns out that the gravitational oscillator model predicts that the fundamental scale of gravitational harmonic oscillator is Earth radius divided by 2. Is it possible to speak of M89 genome and its evolution? Is the next question. The decay of M89 flux tubes to closed flux tubes by reconnection and further decay to ordinary nucleus determines the abundances of the solar wind. The arriving M89 flux tube defines a huge supernucleus. One can, however, ask whether this supernucleus decomposes to shorter M89 nuclei, which would be analogous to the dark variants of genes and proteins of the TG-inspired quantum biology. It would be kind of long DNA decomposing to genes. If this decomposition determines the abundances of the solar wind, which in turn determines the spectrum of the star, one can ask whether the spectrum would reflect the M89 genome directly. Note also that M89 atoms at the surface of the Sun have the same spectrum as ordinary M107 atoms. Is the decomposition to M89 nuclei dynamical and subject to evolution in the same way as the ordinary genome, as predicted by TGD-inspired quantum biology? What inspires this question was the anomalous abundance of lithium for a red dwarf with size 30 times the size of the Sun, located in the Milky Way halo. The star is very metal poor and has lithium abundance of 10 to 5 times higher than expected. Could the thermodynamical model of the Sun and of planets be replaced with a geometric description? A basic objection against the quantum model of stars and planets is that thermodynamic notions like pressure are absolutely essential for the understanding of physics of the solar and planetary interiors. In the thermal models, pressure prevents gravitational collapse. In the geometric model, the tension of the monopole flux tubes in vertical and horizontal directions would prevent gravitational collapse. I have developed a model of nuclei, atoms based on spherical structures carrying platonic solids, having nucleons reach electrons at their vertices. If this applies also to the Sun and planets, they would resemble outcomes of quantum engineering. These spheres would carry now density of nuclei. When nuclear fusion does not anymore produce enough energy, the pressure disappears and the core collapses. The counterpart of this description in a geometric model would be following. The monopole flux tubes and the dark matter at them require energy feed. The periodic cooling of M89 nuclei could provide it. In the absence of energy feed, effective Planck constant is reduced and the flux tubes collapse, and gravitational collapse is an unavoidable outcome. In standard physics, black holes or neutron stars emerge in the depth of the star. This is due to the loss of pressure created by nuclear reactions. Ordinary black holes correspond to volume-filling flux tube spaghettis, consisting of M107 nucleus. TCD, however, suggests an entire hierarchy of black holes, labeled by Mersenne primes and their Gaussian counterparts. The periodic cooling in the absence of nuclear reactors transforms M89 nuclei to ordinary nuclei and would lead to a Ricardo black hole. M89 black holes could in turn emerge from MG79 black holes. Entire hierarchy would be